Too expensive, too risky, built on experimental surgery and a dead genre. But somehow, it became a classic. And behind the scenes? Lawsuits over dead ancestors, real blood and sword fights, a leading man who almost couldn't walk, and a sequel so bad it killed the franchise forever. Here are 20 insane facts about the Mask of Zorro that prove Hollywood runs on chaos and they're stranger than any script. Number 1. They bet $95 million on experimental spine surgery. In 1997, Anthony Hopkins was TriStar's dream choice for the aging Zorro. One problem: his back was so damaged he could barely stand, let alone swing a sword. Hopkins flat out refused the role, but the studio was desperate. They'd already committed to a massive budget, and Hopkins was their only A-list anchor. So they waited and prayed. While Hopkins underwent experimental laser spine surgery that might not even work, the gamble paid off. Hopkins recovered, accepted the part, and anchored a $95 million production. But imagine if that surgery had failed. The entire movie would have collapsed before filming even started. Number 2. This movie was supposed to come out 3 different times. Originally slated for late 1997, then early 1998, then finally summer 1998. Each delay cost millions and sent Sony executives into panic mode. The production was a nightmare of extended shooting schedules and endless reshoots. Sony desperately needed an action blockbuster for their first quarter releases, but the film kept spiraling out of control. More pickup shots, script rewrites, technical problems that seemed to multiply overnight. Each postponement meant losing prime real estate in theaters and spending more on marketing campaigns they had to scrap. By the time it finally hit screens in July 1998, the budget had ballooned far beyond expectations. The irony? All those delays and reshoots actually made the movie better. Number 3. They were terrified of James Cameron's ship. Officially, TriStar denied changing release dates to avoid Titanic. Unofficially, studio insiders knew they were running scared from Cameron's disaster epic that was dominating everything in its path. The media started connecting the dots. Zorro's mysterious delays, Titanic's unprecedented box office run, the convenient timing of Zorro's final release date, safely after Titanic had exhausted its theatrical momentum. Nobody wanted to admit they were dodging the iceberg. But when you're betting nearly $100 million on a swashbuckler revival, you don't pick fights with the biggest movie of all time. Smart move. Titanic would have crushed them. Number 4. Swashbuckler films were considered box office poison. For decades, Hollywood had written off sword-fighting adventure films as relics from the Errol Flynn era. Pirates, masked heroes, elaborate duels, all considered dated and unmarketable to modern audiences. TriStar was essentially betting the farm on reviving a genre that hadn't worked since the 1940s. Industry experts called it financial suicide. Why would contemporary audiences care about a masked vigilante in 1800s California? The studio's own research showed that adventure films were performing poorly, but they believed Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins could transcend genre limitations through sheer star power and production value. It was a massive risk that could have ended careers. Instead, it proved that great storytelling trumps genre prejudice. Number 5. They made a movie about a real person who inspired a fictional character. The legal department's nightmare. Joaquin Murrieta. Where does history end and fiction begin? Who owns what elements of the story? Lawyers spent months navigating this legal maze, trying to protect the studio from potential lawsuits while maintaining creative freedom. They had to carefully balance historical accuracy with dramatic license. And guess what? The legal battles weren't over when the movie was released. Number 6. The dialect coaches couldn't get the leads to sound like they were from the same century. Catherine Zeta-Jones was struggling to master a Spanish accent, while Anthony Hopkins insisted on maintaining his Welsh inflections for authenticity. The result? A linguistic nightmare that had dialogue coaches pulling their hair out. Hopkins argued that his character was Spanish nobility, so a European accent made historical sense. Zeta-Jones needed to sound like Spanish California aristocracy, but their accents were so different they sounded like characters from different movies. Multiple coaching sessions, endless ADR work, heated discussions about historical accuracy versus audience comprehension. The dialect coaches were caught in the middle of 2 strong-willed stars with opposing approaches. The final compromise? They just embraced the accent chaos and hoped audiences wouldn't notice. Number 7. A real fight broke out over sword choreography. Antonio Banderas was notorious for insisting on doing increasingly dangerous sword work himself, leading to multiple heated confrontations with stunt coordinators about insurance liability and safety protocols. Banderas believed authentic swordplay required real risk. Stunt coordinators knew that injured stars shut down productions. This is authentic danger. Number 8. The villain stayed in character during lunch breaks. Stuart Wilson reportedly remained in character as the sadistic Montero between takes, making other cast members genuinely uncomfortable during downtime and causing unexpected tension on set. Wilson believed method acting required complete immersion, so he'd sit at the craft services table, still radiating menace, still speaking in Montero's cold, calculating tone. Even during casual conversations, cast members started avoiding him during breaks. The atmosphere became genuinely creepy when Wilson was around. Some actors complained to the director about the uncomfortable vibe Wilson was creating. The irony? His commitment to the role created such authentic tension that it actually improved the on-screen chemistry. The fear was real. Number 9. Animal rights activists infiltrated the set. Multiple horses were injured during elaborate action sequences, leading to animal rights activists literally sneaking onto the production to document safety violations and causing significant delays while new protocols were implemented. The activists had inside information about scheduling and locations, safety concerns, and legal challenges. The incidents created a PR nightmare. Stories about injured horses could have destroyed the film's family-friendly image. Studio executives scrambled to implement new safety measures while managing the media fallout. The delays cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and forced rewrites of several action sequences. But the improved costume designer fought the studio over mask designs. Heated debates erupted over whether Banderas should wear the same mask design as Hopkins' character, with costume designer Graciela Mazon fighting for distinct looks to represent their different cultural heritages. Mazon argued that identical masks would erase the cultural significance of the character's evolution. Hopkins represented Spanish colonial influence, while Banderas embodied Mexican resistance. The masks should reflect that transformation. Studio executives wanted consistency and brand recognition. Fans expected the Zorro mask. Marketing departments worried about confusing audiences with different design. The battle lasted weeks. Costume fittings, screen tests, executive meetings. Mazon threatened to quit over creative control. The studio threatened to fire her over budget concerns. The compromise? Subtle differences that most viewers never consciously noticed, but that gave each character distinct visual identity. Number 11. One of cinema's most memorable moments was pure improvisation. At the climax, when Zorro confronts Captain Love, he pulls out his sword, and sunlight glints off the blade running its full length. This wasn't CGI or planned cinematography. It was Antonio Banderas' spontaneous suggestion during filming. Banderas had to tilt the sword at precisely the right angle to catch the sun without breaking eye contact with Matt Letcher. The timing had to be perfect. The angle had to be exact. One wrong move, and the moment would be ruined. It only took 3 takes. 3 attempts to capture a moment that would become one of the most iconic shots in modern adventure cinema. Pure improvisation that became movie magic. The scene was so effective that audiences assumed it was carefully planned and digitally enhanced. Instead, it was just a brilliant actor with perfect timing and a lucky break from the sun. Number 12. A total accident that made the final cut. During the famous scene where Zorro extinguishes candles with his whip, adding real fire to the mix wasn't part of the plan. Zeta-Jones' reaction was completely authentic, genuine surprise and fear as flames appeared on her costume. The crew rushed to extinguish the fire while cameras kept rolling. The accident created such authentic tension and chemistry that the editors couldn't resist including it. Sometimes the best movie moments are the ones nobody intended to create. Number 13. It was never in the script, but they left it in. The iconic scene where Zorro carves his initial was completely improvised by Banderas during a sword training session. Director Martin Campbell liked it so much, he rewrote the scene around it. By the time anyone noticed, both actors were already committed to the scene. The blood was real, the pain was real, the determination to finish the scene was real. The resulting footage had an authenticity that couldn't be faked or choreographed. The insurance company would have shut down production if they'd known, but the scene was too good to waste on safety concern. Number 15. Nobody was supposed to see this. Costume designer Graciela Mazon created completely different costume designs. Number 16. This role nearly ended the franchise forever. The 2005 sequel, The Legend of Zorro, was such a creative disaster that it effectively killed the franchise, with Banderas later admitting in interviews that he regretted not having more creative control over the follow-up. The original film's success created pressure for a quick sequel. Studio executives wanted to capitalize on the brand recognition without understanding what made the first film work. The sequel lacked the character development, story structure, and creative vision that made the original special. It became a generic action film with Zorro branding rather than a legitimate continuation of the story. Banderas publicly expressed disappointment with the sequel, saying he should have insisted on better creative control. The franchise died with that film, and no studio has attempted to revive it since. Number 17. A lawsuit that went too far. Descendants of the actual Joaquin Murrieta family sued the studio after the film's release, claiming they deserved compensation for using their ancestors' story without permission, leading to a legal battle that lasted years without acknowledgement or compensation. They wanted both financial damages and historical accuracy corrections. The studio's legal team argued that historical figures belong to public domain and that fictional interpretations are protected creative work. The case became a complex battle over intellectual property rights and historical accuracy. The lawsuit lasted longer than the movie's theatrical run. Legal fees exceeded the family's potential compensation. The case became a cautionary tale about Hollywood's relationship with historical source material. Number 18. The studio hated this moment until it blew up. The film's success directly led to Zeta Jones being cast in Entrapment and eventually winning an Oscar for Chicago, essentially launching her A-list career from this one role. Before Zorro, Zeta Jones was primarily known for British television and minor film roles. Hollywood didn't consider her leading lady material for major studio productions. The film's success proved she could carry big-budget action and romance. Casting directors took notice. Agents started returning her calls. Scripts started arriving at her door. Within 3 years, she went from unknown Welsh actress to Academy Award winner. The Mask of Zorro was her Hollywood breakthrough, the role that changed everything. Number 19. The joke that went too far is aging mentors to younger heroes. The role became a template that limited his future opportunities. He joked in interviews that he should have played the young Zorro and let Banderas play the old one. The comment revealed his frustration with Hollywood's tendency to trap actors in successful character types. The irony? Hopkins' performance was so effective that it became the standard for mentor characters in action films. His success created his own creative prison. Number 20. They lied to the studio and got away with it. Film scholars have argued that the movie's subtext about Mexican resistance to Spanish colonialism was intentionally timed to coincide with growing Latino political movements in California, making it accidentally prophetic about 21st century immigration debates. The film's themes of cultural identity, resistance to oppression, and fighting for homeland rights resonated with contemporary political movements in ways that weren't entirely coincidental. Some scholars believe the timing was deliberate, releasing a film about Mexican resistance during a period of increasing Latino political activism in California. Others argue it was fortunate coincidence. The movie's political subtext became more relevant over time, as immigration debates intensified and Latino representation in Hollywood became a major issue. What started as a swashbuckling adventure became an accidental political statement about cultural identity and resistance that remains relevant today. It started as a disaster experimental surgery, dead genres, and legal minefields. But somehow, that chaos became a classic. The accidents became iconic. The conflicts created chemistry. The risks paid off. The Mask of Zorro proved that sometimes the best movies are the ones that shouldn't have worked at all. If you're obsessed with the weird, wild secrets behind Hollywood's biggest films, hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started digging into the chaos that creates cinema magic.